When things feel a bit chaotic, Instacart helps deliver milk and sausage. Add a little life to your cart. Get stuff from literally all your stores, from baby wipes to albacore. Add a little life to your cart. Instacart helps get your groceries. Your first 3 deliveries are free.
Download Instacart. Add life to cart. Terms apply.
Okay, we're going to start here. I've got a guest on the line that this is going to be a challenge talking about, because usually we go full boat into ghosts and Bigfoot and ETs and the whole 9 yards, off over into that other realm of, I think, fantastic and interesting and curious and unexplained. Well, there's other issues that we also deal with on the day-to-day, everyday life that that bring us into the unexplained and bring us into areas that we still have a lot of questions about and that we are still curious about. And sometimes the only way we can learn is going through it, firsthand. So my guest, the book is called Finding Color in the Darkness, Losing My Son to Bipolar Disorder by Margie Thompson. And this is all across the board. We're going to get into it. The pets are in there, the family's in there, the challenges of figuring out life as you live it, and that's what I liked about it. Is it's Margie.
Yep.
You cover a lot of territory here. So first off, I just want to say thank you for writing your book.
Well, thank you so much. It was something I felt I had to do.
This, for one thing, when you're writing a book like this, you're reliving the moments. And so I just want to get off right now and say that this is a difficult subject for me and for a lot of people to interview somebody about, because we don't know, don't want to push the wrong buttons, we don't want to say the wrong words, and we don't want to bring up something that you might have already worked through and then, bring it right back front and center. So first of all, I appreciate the fact that you're willing to go through this, because that is also for you, putting yourself on the line and saying, well, I can handle it. And I'm knowing being through some tough issues. Some days you can, and some days it's just not so fun. So that's what I want to say right off the bat. This is not an easy interview, okay? So that's where we start.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. And just to address that point, I feel that this is my life call. I mean, the lesson I've learned from losing my son is you sort of get to that point when you've dealt with tremendous loss, where you have to, at some point, pick up the pieces and figure out how you're going to move forward. And to me, a part of that moving forward was waking up with my son's voice in my head and just going right to a notebook or to the computer, whichever I was most in the mood for. And the book was built upon a series of journal entries, and then that was finessed over time. And I felt compelled to tell his story and mine to shed light upon mental health and the problems that we have in this country. But I know that he was my co-author. There's no doubt in my mind that he was helping me do this. And so that's become my mission in my life. While I'm, as long as until I draw my last breath, I will be here advocating for the importance of mental health awareness and for suicide prevention. And it doesn't bother me at all to talk about it. It makes me thrive to talk about it and to help other people. And I've been doing that on an informal basis when I'm put in touch with somebody who's just lost somebody. And my heart breaks for that person, because I remember very well what that feels like. But it's so empowering to be able to help them and to take their hand virtually and grab and guide them along. And I wish that I had that person for me when it happened to me. And so as much as I'm able to do that for others, the better I feel about it.
Well, I'll tell you, having had a father who had mental illness and going up in that environment and knowing, and it was only until I was, I'm thinking 6th grade, 5th grade, but walking on eggshells and knowing things were not going to be predictable. And my mom always addressed it by daddy's thinker doesn't work right. And so when things would happen that were unexplainable and sometimes traumatic, that was daddy's thinker doesn't work right. So always having that as a kind of a preset, and knowing then as I got older that there were moments when he would be fully lucid and very kind, but the minute he had a flashback or a memory, or all of a sudden I looked like my mother, it would trigger something. And he had what they called late adult onset paranoid schizophrenia. Okay, so he was institutionalized for a bit, and my grandmother, his mom, was not happy about that, but he was a danger, and so
Yeah.
those kinds of things, having been in that environment, knowing as the daughter, the child who's completely helpless,
Right.
and watching things happen that you can't prevent, and having no idea what way is up, and also no way to
Right.
know how to stop it. And I'm reading your book and seeing, you saw things, but at the same time, this is day to day. You're living your life. You're going to work. You're trying to work with other students and with, the whole another son. The whole aspect of then trying to rescue somebody who is clearly, as you can go by and look in your journal, finding that there's no lifeline. And what I see
Yeah.
in your story is that tremendous sense of looking back, saying, what else could I have done? I should have done. I could have done if I would have done. And I think you did
Yeah.
brilliantly just by going through it and getting through it and being in a position to look and say to others, this is what it feels like and this is what it looks like, because that's helpful.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I mean, the one thing I wish that I had done, but I'd gotten past the point of blaming myself. But it took me quite some time to accept that his illness was not something that could be cured. I just thought every time he got treatment that it was in the rearview mirror, that we could move forward, and that was that. And it was hard for me to understand what it felt like to have depression, because I never suffered from clinical depression. I certainly had moments of situational depression. I think most of us do at some point in time. But this, from everything I've read from I've since read more after writing the book or seeing more from, there's a movie on Netflix, All the Bright Places, which was another interesting take on it. And they also had Modern Love, a third episode on that, about a woman with bipolar disorder, and another author, Matt Haig, who wrote about his depression, and William Steinman's book. But reading these things and seeing them to understand what it's like to be in that person's shoes and the mania that will spiral out of control. It's great at first, and then they get too many ideas in their head that leads to overload. And from that overload, they're just propelled into the dark side, and no one knows how long. They don't know how long it will last, but it's just like waking up under this weight or this heavy fog where everything else around you is a blur. So you don't have that connection that we all need to thrive in this world. And so I wish I had understood that this wasn't something he could control. And that so for him, happiness was not a choice. And for many who suffer from depression, it is not a choice. And I used to believe that it absolutely was. And it is for me, but most of the time, but after having lost a son, but for people with clinical and severe chronic depression, it is not. And you can be feeling great one moment and then just wake up the next day, and there it is, as Churchill used to call it, the black dog, but that sort of that unwelcome visitor. I happen to like black dogs. It's not a great reference for me, but it's just the idea that you don't know when it's coming, and there it is. And I think it's terrifying for people who have that, have this disability.
Well, part of it too, when you were talking about him being going into a facility of some kind, whether it was a mental health facility, I think a psych ward, where all of a sudden he's thrown in with people who have severe problems, and that maybe asking the types of questions that would help maybe sort who's somebody who is extremely dangerous versus somebody who's just having an episode where with bipolar, some of them, I think 3 months, 3 years, they go through cycles, and there would be a cycle where they're going to have issues, and then they could sit through the cycle or wait out the cycle and not have to be next to somebody who's threatening to kill them every 30 seconds.
Right. And that's a huge problem with our mental health care system, is that it's so broken, in that when you put somebody into a hospital, and it's necessary to put them into a hospital when they are either A, a danger to themselves, or B, a danger to others, or potentially both. But they ask that question before someone is admitted to a psych ward, and both my ex-husband and my son were admitted into psych wards, and I just observed it enough to see how completely terrifying it is to be there. And if you're suffering from severe depression and you're only a danger to yourself, and you're terrified, and then you're put in with people who are shouting obscenities and making violent threats. And when one case, a chair was thrown through the sort of plastic window of the patient lounge, and it was shattered even though it was plastic. And on two occasions when I was visiting my son the second day of his hospitalization, the hospital went on to lockdown. And I
Wow.
refused to leave without him. And they said, we'll have to make up an extra bed. We've got too much going on in here. And I said, they're going to make up the bed because I'm not leaving. So they finally, let us leave at the end of the day. But it was so scary to see my son just trembling and watching all the madness. And I hate to say the word madness because we all can possess it at some point in time, but I'm talking about violent madness.
Right.
Around them, and that's the last place they need to be. It only exasperates a very already desperate situation. And so there are cases of people who, knowing that that's their only alternative when they get to that deep, dark place, to go into a place where they're going to be thrown in with other violent types of people, that they take their lives thinking, okay, that's the only, if my only hope to save my life is to go into a hospital in that environment, I'm just getting out of this right now. So we need to do something. We really need to do something to change how we treat people, or how we diagnose people with mental health disorders, because they're very different diagnoses.
Okay.
And to the treatment of
What I was going to say is, it's tough because, for one thing, this isn't a fun topic, and that's the deal here, is that the people a lot of times will avoid you because in our world of everything's supposed to be peachy keen, and all the people on Instagram have perfect lives, and all the stars and celebrities make tons of money and they're happy, and we're supposed to always have the happy face. People who constantly put on that sad face are pariahs. You don't want to be around them because they're going to drag you down. And at the same time, you would like to help, but sometimes saying something perky just puts them into another downward spiral because you've just repulsed them. The world isn't happy. That's hard to be around. How do you deal with that?
It's hard, but I think there are more people than most of us realize who do not present as sad and depressed. A lot of people, and my son was one of them, presented as this very enlightened, wise, old soul, generous being. And his Facebook page is filled up with all of these comments that things like, how could a person who was such a kind, sweet soul be so deep that you couldn't take it anymore?
Right.
And you helped me through my darkest times, and I never knew you were struggling. Why didn't you say anything? And men, I think, particularly don't like to talk about their feelings, and so then there's even a site on Instagram, Males Aloud, and it's not anti-female. It's just saying, guys, you can talk about your emotions, because
right.
men tend not to. And so I think that makes it harder for people who feel that they can't express their opinions. And to me, it's a case of we need to normalize the conversation from the time our children are small. We talk to them about sex, drugs, and alcohol as they get older, but we should be also talking to them about if they have depressive thoughts, if they feel sad sometimes, if they've ever thought about not wanting to live anymore, as opposed to taking your life. And we're being careful about how we present that question. But once you normalize the conversation and make people feel like, oh, I'm not alone, then they're more open to expressing themselves. But it's also, as you say, it's a fine line of expressing yourself but not being the burden. And I think a lot of people are aware that they don't want to be a burden to people. They don't want to bring them down, but it's better that you have somebody that you can talk to, even if it's a therapist, if you can limit what you share to friends, speak more to your family and to your therapist, and maybe you have a close friend that you're comfortable with and who can handle it. But it is hard because there are some people who will always be negative. But from my experience, and maybe that's just from my experience, but the people that I've known just following suicide, these sites for parents who've lost a child to suicide, or reading about stories from this wonderful child who was in a great college doing great things and nobody saw it coming, and then he went home for a Christmas break and it was found hanging on New Year's Eve. Mm-hmm. And those are the things that make everybody go, wow, I can't believe it. And Robin Williams and Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade.
Yes.
So there are a lot of people that really go to great lengths to hide their pain. And sometimes negative people, or people that we perceive that are negative, might have had bad experiences, but they're not necessarily severely depressed, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's the thing. They mask it. And
They do mask it. Yeah.
well, for one thing, they don't want an intervention. All right. They want to live their own lives and they want things on their terms. And if you start talking about things like that, sometimes you get attention you don't want, because then there are the good people who would like to offer all sorts of helpful advice
Right.
to make
and
you
advice and
normal.
platitudes are terrible.
Yeah. They want you, okay,
Yeah.
just be normal. It's all right. Just be normal. What is normal?
Yeah.
It isn't the same.
Yeah,
It isn't
right.
cookie cutter. I want to also
Right.
bring in the metaphysical aspect, because there's a part in here. The publisher, she says, just read the book. Okay. Because I know from me and my own experience, life goes on, and I had this is one of those weird things that was the first time I even knew it was possible. We moved into a house, and I actually had this contact and had things happen to me when I'm waking up for I have no idea, hearing chimes, having something touch me, paranormal experiences where the VCR case, it had 2 magnetic glass doors. They were open at both equidistance apart. I called my husband, did you do this? What could you have done this? And I didn't know what I was talking about. Finally, we get to the final thing here. I wake up and I realize as I'm choking, and because I know something's trying to talk, and I'm thinking, well, this is what it feels like to be in some way, shape, or form possessed. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm thinking, this is a ghost. And that's when we started asking questions. And the person who had been in this duplex that we had purchased for a really good price had, and I'm going to use the term, I don't know if they knew that this person was suicidal, but committed suicide. And that's not, from that, I started talking telepathically, hearing, listening, because he was so frustrated with me that I didn't know what was going on, because he knew I was intuitive. I didn't. And he just wanted to go. He was done. And so he's saying, but he didn't have a support system. He was isolated from the neighbors and what we heard. Also, they said the closet was, this is funny because I kept getting the thing I was messy, sloppy.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, his closet was the clothing like 1.5 inches apart for all the hangers, everything. So he was fastidious, and he was probably obsessive compulsive and a few other things. But my sense was, when I finally figured out what was going on and said, it's okay, you are not alone. And then there was this passing where it was gone. He didn't have to talk to me anymore. But that was my sense, one of my first times of having a connection with somebody who was desperate to move on because they were stuck in between. And so I had to reanalyze and reevaluate. Oh my gosh, that wasn't an ending, and it was just he was stuck, and that part of it happened. And so I wanted to get into that because you were walking across an intersection at some point, and probably just kind of everyday thoughts, not on your cell phone, thank you.
No, it was not.
Not texting.
No, just protected by love and spirit. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I think in the book you described, you said something touched you or pushed you or pulled you out of, because there was a car coming, and you didn't even notice that.
No, I was getting ready to cross the street in Boston. It was a one-way street, and I saw the light for the oncoming traffic turn to red, and I watched the pedestrian light signal be okay to go, and I didn't look to the right. I just proceeded across the intersection, and I felt this force of wind, and when I was about halfway through the intersection, rapidly pulled me, great force. It was not a windy day. It pulled me backwards, back up onto the curb without tripping over the curb. And a car at that moment ran the red light, and another car honked. And I looked around, I knew it was like a wind force, but I looked around and people were on their cell phones and no one had noticed. And it was just sort of a surreal scene that it went unwitnessed except for by the driver that honked the horn.
Yeah.
And I got back to my car to drive home, and of course we know spirit can connect through energy and radio stations and put ideas in people's heads.
Yes.
Or directed to things at the right time. And I turned on the radio, and the beginning words of Tupac's song, the rap artist that died at hip hop artist that died at 24, came on. Dear Mama, you are appreciated. I love you, sweet Mama. And I was like, oh, John, thank you.
Yeah.
But when you talk about committed suicide, that's something I'm trying to stay away from, because suicide used to be viewed as a crime, and older religions and families are actually were shamed after someone died by suicide. But now we try and stay away from the word committed because those who've lost a loved one to suicide, and I only became aware of that after losing John to suicide. But we don't want to have it be associated with a crime because it's usually the result of a long-term mental health illness. And I remember hearing a report on NPR, just caught the tail end of it when I was driving to work one day, that said, the speaker was saying that people who take their lives slip into a state of madness because the unbearable pain, they develop what they call a psychache, which is literally an ache of the psyche.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't stand it. They have to jump out of a burning building is the only way out, or the cement is drying around them. They just know, the only thing they know is that they have to escape this pain. And so they develop a sort of paranoid sense of themselves and of others, and what's happening around them is a blur. And so they're not thinking about, I can't do this to my mom or my wife or whoever it is. They just know that they have to get out. And so it's not a crime, but I think since it used to be, my son didn't have, because I felt his connection shortly after he passed, and I had an actual visual image of him that scared me because I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
But I think he and I had such a close rapport in that I was a single parent, and his brother was living in California and I'm in Massachusetts, and we lived together for the most part. And he kind of moved out, but would always come back home, and we cooked together and art together, and painted the colored paint on the walls in the family room, the kitchen, and we designed it together. And the last medium I had a reading with not too long ago, she said he keeps, because he would hang all these different pictures up around and pottery things around the walls, and she said he keeps changing. There's a certain picture that he keeps changing, he keeps tilting it, and so he could play with you because he was playful in nature. And I said, yes. And she said, it's at the bottom of the stairs, and you're looking at it right now, aren't you? And this is a phone interview.
Yeah.
So, we had that close connection, and I had said to him when I finally did get it, as I said earlier, I regretted not understanding what was going on with him earlier, so that I could have shown him more sympathy and been empathetic to him, and instead of thinking in my mind, why can't he just get over this? Because for a while I thought he was just being dramatic and was overplaying his emotions, and then it became painfully obvious in the month before he died. But I had said to him at some point before he died, if I could take this pain and own it as a mother, I would do that. Mother wants to watch her child suffer so much. And so I think he knew that he, in a way, had my blessing to go, and I didn't realize that that's what I was actually saying to him.
Yes.
But when I think back, I do believe that the universe has a plan, and that we are here for a certain predetermined amount of time. And I'm sure some people would want to, throw a block at me for saying that. But I think he came here to do his work. He helped so many people, and a lot of people described him, both mediums and friends, described him as an old soul who was too good for this world. And he came through to help other people and help a lot of people. And I've had a couple of meetings tell me that he's on the other side still doing the same thing for people that pass suddenly by either an accident or by suicide. And he's the one going, dude, over here, you're dead. Let me show you how it works. So, I feel that we have that close connection. So I don't think he had trouble crossing over, but a lot of people who do die suddenly, as I'm sure you know, particularly by their own hand, have more trouble processing that transition. And it does take apparently 3 months to fully cross over.
Well, part of it has to do with the fact that in the awakening that comes with, they're still here. They just don't have the body. And that's part of it's like, wait a second, this wasn't the way it was supposed to play out. And I'm not saying that's 100%, but in some cases, that's the thing. And that's what I've experienced is that essence, that soul, that being is still here. Just there's not a vehicle. And so they have to reconcile that. And usually I ask for help so that somebody, another being, can come in on their level and give them a lift and say, okay, here, we're going this way. And that's what's happened. But it's just that thing of when you were connecting with mediums and when you were connecting with intuitives and psychics, what was that like? I mean, there has to be some trepidation, some apprehension, and are they going to get it right? Or, is this a waste of time? Because I think during that initial grief period, there's just that sense of anything would be helpful. So what was the most helpful?
Well, in the beginning, I think I've been to nearly a dozen readings, and two of the readers were I went to twice, or the mediums I went to twice because they were quite good. But it was a process for many reasons because I think since I talk a lot, my friend of mine who set me up with a medium that she'd seen. She said, now remember, don't feed the medium. You let them guide you, and they'll ask the questions you can confirm or deny, and maybe give slight assist, but really just let them guide the process, and don't tell them who you're there to see or hear from. Let them figure that out. If they're good, they'll do that. And so I had a hard time when people would start to find things, and it's also realizing it's not a clear channel. You and I are speaking to each other. If we misunderstand something, we can clarify, and it's fine. But when you're speaking to the other side, as I'm sure you know, there is some nuance, a lot of nuance perhaps, and messages can be misinterpreted, and sometimes messages come through for things that are going to happen, or things that you don't remember that happened, and then you'll think a few weeks later, like, oh my God, or it comes to you as that's what they were referring to. I had no idea. I could not place that memory. And so I have this picture of the spirit on the other side. In this case, my son going, come on, Mom, can't you remember when we went to the beach that time, or when you found that $10? And so there's that, and so but there's also the connection between the medium and the spirit. And as an example, to give you where that can go on, I went to a medium who I won't name her, but she was a renowned medium, and she has dogs, and her husband was away, and she had said that she was trying to let go of the other distractions in the room, and it was a phone interview and a reading, and my son was a huge animal lover, and as am I, but she had a great reputation and had done many great readings, but this was a terrible reading, and I think it was because my son was upset that she wasn't letting the dogs in the house. I was upset, so I just said, just fell apart. So
there was a disconnect.
Disconnect, and you have to. I think both medium and client have to meditate beforehand, and to be able to get the chatter to the best of your ability. Mediums can do it more effectively than the person who's being read for, of course, but. So you have to be in the right place, the medium has to be in the right place, and those two have to have the connection with the medium. And my best reading was in July of this year with this woman who I talked with again recently, but who talked about the painting that she brought through. This isn't in the book, and I think it's
okay. Wait. Okay, stop, because what I'm picking up on is you need to do coloring, like coloring books. And when you said painting, it's like I'm going to say this first. And the thing is, because your therapy is through colors, and you are so dynamic as an artist, and you have shut that out. You have shut that out completely. And so if you would let go and open up and stop saying I can't, and stop saying I don't have time, and stop saying these things are more important. You know what? The very most important thing you can do right now with your son behind you, and he's got your back, is to start paying attention to that artistic, creative element that you stuffed aside because you had too much trauma in your life from other people. You're supposed to, in my shape, this is just coming through, in your own world, you're here for your soul's purpose. And your soul's purpose was to help these and to bring through this information and to put it in a platform that others can understand, that the person can't always prevent, but they can bring through a higher meaning. And that's what's happening with you as your son, as you're talking about bipolar, as you're talking about suicide, as you're saying mental health isn't always diagnosable because it doesn't have a frowny face. Sometimes it looks really perfect and all of a sudden it changes the next day. But you're perfect in your colors, and it's like almost like paint by numbers. But what you are doing with those colors is giving people a chance to heal when they see it, and you are healing yourself as you do it. Okay, now go ahead.
Oh, well. Thank you. That's interesting because I've been told several times to go back to painting.
Okay. That's what's when you isn't in the book. Then I'm going to say this is what I've been picking up on. Is it was like, okay, start coloring. Start coloring.
Start coloring. No, that's exactly. I've heard that before, so he must be coming through right now.
Okay,
obviously. But this one I was holding in this phone interview, my son's prayer card, and on the front of the prayer card there are two images. One of him as a toddler, holding a black lab who's a puppy, and then the other image is of him at age 19 holding his quote-unquote baby girl, a husky. And so on the other side of that prayer card are quotes from Tuesdays with Morrie, the book, which was one of John's favorite books. And I was thinking last summer, before the book was completed about using those quotes to start up, to head off certain sections in the book. And so I've been meditating, holding the card for about 15 or 20 minutes before this reading. And so the medium started off by bringing to my grandmother, who's come through before. She was a teacher, as was I, and lots of energy, and loved to cook and loved to entertain family and friends. And so she's always there. But she said she's stepping back. She's not going there to see. You're here for a young man, your son. He she went on to explain everything leading up to his death and all the things that were going on, and with incredible detail. I think my jaw was down on the floor listening to it. And then she said, he's with a black lab in spirit, and they're so happy together.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and you take care of his dog here, and she's got blue eyes. Is she a husky? And he's so happy how much good care you take of her. And then later on in the reading, she said, wait a minute, those dogs I mentioned earlier, you're holding something in your hand now that has an image of your son with both those dogs at different ages. And wait, there's something written on the back of that you're thinking about using somehow, and he thinks that's a great idea. So I was just amazed that she could bring to not only, she could see what I was holding, or
right.
he was obviously there telling her what I was holding, but also what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That was quite amazing.
Well, they're so much more
Very
connected
powerful.
in that other realm than we are. I mean, there's no time. They see forward, backwards, inside out, and upside down, the whole 9 yards. And we're stuck in this linear, this box that limits us. But that's the whole point. This is charades, okay?
How we do. Earth school.
Yeah, and so, but part of that is just knowing that the connection that you have, and it's not. Oh gosh, when you lose somebody in the physical, you're going to miss the touch. You're going to miss the voice. All of those things are so powerful here. But when there's this other element, when you feel them and you sense them and the presence is there, it's incredible, because then you realize we are more than just this. And there isn't the death that we have been taught. There's this other way of being that is also incredibly powerful, but it does take an adjustment.
Does. No, thank you for putting it that way. And it's somebody once said it does intensify, and I said, it does. I like that. I'm putting it that way, because there is, as you say, you certainly will always be moments of deeply missing the physical and the smell of Herbal Essence shampoo. So I miss that smell. I miss hugging him and hearing his laugh and seeing that wry smile. But I just there is a connection that is deeper, in that when your children become teenagers and young 20-somethings or adults, they have their own independent life. So you don't have the same connection you had with them when they were small children. But yet to have that deep, uninterrupted connection with them that you had when you were a child, but now they're an adult, it's really something unique and glorious. And so there are times where I just feel so much joy, and I get what I call virtual hugs. It's like a little tingling between my shoulder blades that sort of spreads when I feel his presence.
The energy.
It makes me tingle all over. And I've seen him in light form with it cross the room and circle around my head. And it really is. And just like the things with the tilting the painting, or I'll hear thoughts in my head that could only come from his particular dry sense of humor that I don't possess, that as I'm finishing one statement, and I'll hear his words on top of the statement I'm finishing in my head. So it's a wild kind of like new dynamic that, as you said, it takes time to adjust to and accept it as like, okay, this is what I have to hold on to, and I'm going to hold on to with everything I have, because
absolutely,
it's beautiful.
Absolutely. But you're mirroring to others that this is an advantage, and this is an element that does exist. It's real. And by sharing that, then you give other people kind of a preset that says, okay, maybe this isn't what the people around me have experienced, but now I know somebody who has, and I can ask questions. What does it feel like? How does it make you feel? How do you know they're there? Those kinds of questions from somebody who's going through it are so incredibly powerful, because it's authentic, and it's a way of in a very small way giving us hope that we are still beyond this form and existing on another plane while we're here. We can connect with our loved ones, with those that we miss or we care about. It doesn't take the place of the person being here. Because I know, when
No.
I'm lonely and when I wish that somebody was here, you just want to hug a pillow and say, why does this have to be like this? But that's the emotion, and that's where we are learning and growing, and we have to experience that as part of, I think, as part of our recognition that others have bad days and good days. If we don't know that, then we can't have any compassion for it.
Right. And also we grieve because we've loved. And this world is nothing if we don't have love and connections, and people who spend their time building large houses and driving fancy cars and buying material things. And I don't mean to put any of those things down
No.
for like something comforts you, but what really is important is the people you meet and the connection you feel to one another, and the love that you have for each other, and cherishing that. Because without that, it's a very, very lonely world. And while we're here, it's as much as we can try and treasure those connections, and then those connections will always be there, even if you don't believe in the afterlife. It's I used to teach The Little Prince, as you can read in the book, and as a French teacher, and there's a scene where the fox meets the prince on Earth, and the prince lands on Earth, and he wants him to apprivoise him, which means in French to tame. It means to create ties with one another, and that it takes time, and you have to bit by bit get closer and closer. And Prince isn't sure about it, thinking it will be too much time, but then in the end, he said, when he's leaving, the fox says, "Well, I'm going to be sad you're leaving." And the fox said, "Well, you've gained nothing, and because I'm leaving, you're going to be sad." He said, "No, I've gained something." It's like, how's that? Well, my life used to be monotonous. Everything was in black and white, and you were to me like any other boy, and I was to you like any other fox. But since we have apprivoised each other, we have become unique in the world to one another. And I will always look at the wheat fields and think of it'll make me think of the golden locks of your color of your hair, and the sound of the wind through the wheat, and make me think of your footsteps coming through the wheat. And my heart will always start to go beat faster. And so that's the beauty, is that we always have these memories, and we can treasure them in our heart. And whether we choose to believe in an afterlife or not, we can still remember the spirit of the person.
Well,
I do believe afterlife, but
they brought another shade of color into the world just by their presence.
Right.
And
exactly.
so that's part of it, with when you're painting, when you're doing your artwork, when you bring that other shade in there, they belong to something. They belong to an emotion. They belong to a memory.
Exactly.
They belong to a dream. Yeah. All of those shades and those colors have values. And that's how we basically color our world. So, which is so perfect with the name of your book, Finding Color in the Darkness. Wow.
No, thank you. that was from the pamphlet that John wrote. And I haven't said this in the book, and I haven't said it in interviews, but the cover is actually a picture of John. And he used to go to these festivals, and he did what they call gloving, and they're like Michael Jackson sort of white gloves with LED lights and the fingertips. And he loved to draw purple hearts, and he loved the color purple, and spiritual color too. And he was spiritual, and but he would do these heart shapes all the time. So that's him at a festival doing a heart shape on the cover.
How fantastic! The overlay of that is presence, the light. And because for me, what I've experienced, and I have night lights, 24/7, that's my connection, is this nightlight thing started in 1997, and it's been pretty active this last week. It goes through periods when of course, it's never a nightlight. It's always told me, not a nightlight. So don't expect it to be on. It's usually off, and then it likes to blink. But it's been doing it for 20 some years. So it's a pattern. Anyway, but the light is our essence. It's how we express ourselves when we don't have the physical form to bump around in.
Right, exactly.
So he was already there. He was giving you a template for, okay, this is what I'm going to look like. Just look at this big, bright heart, this light heart, and here I am. And so here he is on this book, and we're seeing him in that light form, that spirit form, that essence form, without even having to have the other thing to give it some kind of a category. When you look at somebody, oh, that person has a big nose, that person has long hair, that person has red complexion, whatever, and then we put them in those boxes. But with the light, it's neutral. Right. It's neutral, and it's all.
Yeah, right. That's a good point.
Yeah. So at least that's unfortunately that's the way I do. It's like,
Oh, I know.
shoot.
Yeah. Well, I've come to more and more just look at all of us that we're just in these bodies. These are vehicles, as you say, or vessels for our spirits, and you can explain how a heart stops or a major organ stops, but how do you explain how the soul stops? We know that we all have, feelings and emotions, and I like to think that we all believe that we have a soul. So I don't think the soul can stop. It is energy, and John would say, quote Einstein, and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It simply changes form.
Yeah.
So,
I want to go back a little bit because you said that his father also was institutionalized or in a psych ward. Okay, is this hereditary? What was that? What else went on?
Yes, it is hereditary, and but I think the difference between the two, they were both bipolar, but John's dad, Mark, was a narcissist. But there are different types of narcissism, and I looked up to see which kind. He wasn't horrible, and that he wouldn't really be consciously emotionally abusive to me, but he was very needy.
Yeah.
So he wanted my attention, and so it was that neediness that drove me away. But his neediness also made him not the perfect father. But he had his moments. So, I can't say he was a terrible man, and my son Tim would tell you that there were times that his dad was good. He knew that his dad could be a jerk sometimes, but his dad he was from Indiana and loved basketball. So the one sport he would go to watch his son, he would watch Tim basketball games, and I'd forgotten to put that in the book, so I should have painted him a bit more favorably than I did. But may he rest in peace.
You're human. There's only so much you can remember.
Yeah, right. That's right. So and those bad times kind of jump out at you, Yeah. But it all played a part in John's history too, and so the suicide isn't really it's not usually just one thing, and there are different reasons why people take their lives, obviously.
Yeah.
But bipolar disorder can be a big indicator of suicide. Suicides, and a lot of people go undiagnosed, and you can't really diagnose somebody until they're 17. And there is no blood test, so it's all behavioral.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, and particularly if they're not going to talk about it, it's hard to know that somebody has bipolar disorder. And sometimes we just think, wow, he's acting really bizarre when he would get to the dark side, or he's really excited when he'd be manic.
Right.
So it's over time and being able to witness that. And that's what I wish I had known before and understood. But his father had the same thing, but because of the narcissism, he would be unkind and would make me feel that I had was responsible for problems, or that I wasn't adequate, that I wasn't attentive enough, and I really tried hard, and I am a good person, and I would bend over backwards to try and make sure he was happy and make sure my children were happy. But so he needed me to be more for him than for my children, and that was a terrible thing to have your husband pit you against your children.
Yeah.
And but John was an empath, or empathetic for those that don't know the word empath, but he was always giving of himself. And I think that was, as I said, I think he was here for 24 years he was such a bright light and came into our lives and he gave us a lot of joy, but he also gave me some pain for the dark sides that came out. And as a child, I thought it was just temper tantrums at times, but otherwise he was just so vibrant and alive, and people loved to be around him. One girl had written, she said, I can tell you there was not a day that went by that John didn't make us, everyone in my class, or I know I speak for everyone in my class when I say there was not a day that went by that he didn't make us smile. And they talked about all the light that he brought in, and somebody had said, he's like a comet that burns shortly but so brightly. And so he was just always helping people and taking care of the ones that, if somebody seemed like they weren't having a good time, he would go over to them and make them feel included and make them feel loved and supported. But he gave so much of himself, and he didn't. In the program he was in, they said at the end when I called after he died, and they said he was really good about helping others, but he wouldn't share his own pain. And he extended the program from 3 to 6 weeks so that to try and get him to do that. And he would absorb it. So I think it just got to the point where there was only so much pain he could absorb.
Right.
And then also, if you read about the part when he was crying in the car about what was happening in Syria, and I'm quite sure that was before the war had broken out in Syria. And so I had no idea what he was talking about, but he really felt things so deeply.
I see. I
And
think he was. There were some psychic abilities too. Just that, like exactly what you're describing, because there's a larger sense of awareness where they're in touch with things they can't even put a name to, and that sense of pain is real. When I'm looking at your book, though, because I was the pictures you included of him, and he's so delightful. That there's 158 where he's got the puppy, the black dog. And he's got a great smile, and then he's got the page next to it where he's holding the fish, and there's a camp where he's skiing in New Hampshire, and he looks like a ball of joy. He just looks so exuberant. And so it would be a big void for that not to be here. But I tell you what, if he's got that there and this little heart on the other side, he has to be absolutely full of dynamite.
I know. Well, it was great. There was after he, just for maybe 3 days after he died, somebody posted on his Facebook page was just blowing up with all these comments, and one girl wrote that she said, "John Fish saved my life tonight," and she explained that she had been in a car accident and had been hit, and her car rolled over, and she was unconscious, and that she came too long enough to see John pulling her out of the car and into the side of the road, the highway, so that before an oncoming car hit her car and destroyed it. So if she'd still been in the car, she would have been dead. Mm-hmm. And I completely believe that from my experience in the traffic, the oncoming car.
Yeah.
But, he definitely comes through at certain times. And,
well, okay, so this gives us a way of saying that's how we can help from the other side. So once we're done doing whatever school lessons we need to catch up on here, because, sometimes we're slow learners.
Right.
Once we get done with our remedial school here, then we do have a chance to go through and transition and bring it through in a different level. And you're not going to protect everybody from all their hurts, because some of them are learning curve and they're important. Like what happens here when we think, I could have done this better, I should have done, how can I make it better next time? We do the best we can with what we've got at the moment. And I wanted to do this interview specifically because suicide is a huge issue right now. And some of the articles are saying it's epidemic levels, and they don't know why. They can do all of their guessing and showing what the studies are. And at the same time, we have so much in our environment that can create a sense of not having enough, not being enough, not knowing enough, all of that lack. And yet we live in some of the most, I think, incredible times, because we have so much abundance of a lot, and I'm talking in the Western world, Western society.
I was going to say, but that's not necessarily a good thing.
That's not global, but the Western society, and yet our suicide rates here are horrendous. Okay, I think in 2017, the numbers 47,000 Americans in that year, 7 times greater than the number of those killed in Afghanistan and Iraq between 2001 and 2018. That was 2017. That's huge.
It's huge, and it's killed in that same year. This is in the epilogue of the book, because it more people than died at the height of the AIDS epidemic, and more people than died of breast cancer. And it has reached epidemic proportions. I think it's something like it's gone up 70% in the last 10, 15 years, particularly among 10 to 34-year-olds. And I think a lot of it used to be the result of a long-term mental health illness for the most part. But now they're seeing a lot more impulsive suicides. And when the result of a long-term mental health illness, people have to attempt, usually because the will to live is so strong. And that's a misconception that people are dying or they're killing themselves and they're being selfish, and it's a cowardly act.
Right.
It's not a cowardly act. And if you think about taking your life, it's horrible thought.
Or desperation.
It's desperation, and so people have to build up to the act. But the impulsiveness, I think, comes that they see that more on their teenage side and the 10-year-olds, and it was even a 7-year-old. So it's really scary that there are very young kids taking their lives, and social media and cyberbullying have a lot to do with that, because you talked about earlier the body image and Instagram, and do I have this? What does my vessel look like? Something we put up this perfect image. It's very easy without even being cyberbullied. It's easy for young people to feel that they are amidst it. And I think we all had to endure some sort of test, as we want to call it, when we were younger in school, getting bullied to some degree,
Mm-hmm.
or not doing something that was awkward and then getting teased about it. And it was, brutally painful in and of itself. But if you take that one mistake and it's a child and it goes onto a text message that's sent out to everybody in the school and they're laughing when you walk in,
Yeah.
and you can't walk away and go home and walk away from that. And that is causing people to change the way their neurotransmitters work in their brain. So it equates to having a severe chronic depression and when you have intensified cyberbullying. And technology also, even without cyberbullying, it takes away the need to sit face to face with one another, even among families,
Yeah.
to have meals with each other. And again, it's that connection that we all deeply need. And it's the irony is that we're supposed to be more connected through technology, but technology cannot replace, the mother holding the child in her arms and reading to him or her. And it's a sad state of affairs that we can do everything. Like your smartphone can do this, that,
Yes.
like that, but it can't give love. It can't give hugs and it can't give love, and it can't give the feedback and conversation that is positive and constructive. And it can only give platitudes.
And that's also part of our growing pains of learning how to make it work for us instead of against us. Because in a lot of ways it sabotages. I remember the first time I saw news media starting to put comment sections and thinking, oh my gosh, you're just unleashing the trolls, because at that point, that's all that was there. And because you could do, there was all this, everything's anonymous. And so that part of it is you might be getting trolled by a bot, which means it doesn't count. It doesn't count, but you don't know that.
Yeah.
So it's like,
You
duh.
don't know that.
But see, that's the advantage. Is that, okay, I can stick all these bots on somebody, they'll think they're really bad. Well, it's just me, and I'm in my little closet here setting bots on everybody. And that's what we have to get behind and understand, that as long as we're the creator, we can go back and basically ride shotgun and say, no, I'm not going to do this. This doesn't apply to me. It isn't worth my time. I don't have to live up to somebody else's standards. I believe it. Is it Tupac who has the "Only God Can Judge Me" on one of his album covers? Or I work at a radio station.
I don't know.
I believe that. Yeah, I think.
Could be.
So that's part of it, is that when we give others permission to judge and give us some kind of a label or a standard, we give away our power. And that's what I wish in some way, shape, or form we had schools, studies, teaching classes that say that you are the person who determines your worth. No one else can do that for you. They can only judge you by their standards. And that's not truth. That's their perception and opinion. But we have not learned that yet. We are still in the position.
It's also teaching people to be, and there are, I want to say there's one country and maybe even one state that's doing it, and there's no idea Switzerland that's doing it, but they are having sort of ethics classes, if you call it that, for small children, so that they're taught to be empathetic and to be kind and courteous, and they're also shown what it's like when someone isn't, but it's in a controlled environment, and how that feels inside, so that they can develop empathy, because there's too little of that now. And if somebody says something, if you're in a great mood and somebody says you have just an encounter with somebody, a random person on the street, and they think you went too fast, or I don't know, but they cut you off or swear at you or do something just unkind.
Right.
That can take that good mood for somebody who doesn't suffer from depression and just ruin the whole moment. As they say, it's a major buzzkill, as people say. But if you suffer from severe depression, and I've heard plenty of stories of this happening, if you're in a really down space and somebody says something unkind, and in one case I'm thinking of this woman who lost her daughter, who was a lovely, kind young lady, but she was working as a clinical aide at a clinic, and this woman who was pregnant came in, and it had been the policy to let very pregnant women cut the line. So she was leading the woman up to the front, and it was a new supervisor who had started the day before when this girl was out, and she snapped at her and called her insolent and something else, but she was the kindest soul, and she went home that night and took her life, and that's not a comment. There was always a catalyst of something.
Yeah. Right.
And so just remember to be kind. That's it seems so simple, but it's so important, because if we can treat people with kindness, we might save lives. We could, because it might be, if you say something unkind, it could be the last thing that's ever said to that person. You just don't know, and you don't know what's going on inside of anyone's, soul or life, or whatever it is that they might be dealing with. And it might not be depression, but it might be a lot of hardship and loss. And so what we say, we really have to be careful about how we treat one another and treat others as you wish to be treated, as they say. But an old religious adage.
That's a tall order, because it's the world. As long as we're training military, then that's it's at direct odds. And especially with the PTSD coming back into a place where all of a sudden the rules are back to what we're talking about, as opposed to every man for himself or every woman and everything else is an enemy. Those are the I think the tough challenges we face right now, and the reason that we need help getting to that next level of understanding that we're humans, we have a planet, and we have a space that we are here to treasure. And when we learn that the planet is even bigger than all these little people having all these little fights.
I know.
It's greater than us. Then we have a common goal. We have a common goal. So I want people to connect with you. And the book, Finding Color in the Darkness, is absolutely, I thank you for saying that that's him with the light on the cover, because the heart there, that's perfect. He's here in his own way. And so for anybody who is really has connections or in touch with somebody else, they know about someone who has bipolar disorder, it might give you a clue when you're reading the notes that you take as you day by day of up and down and up and down and questioning and then getting some affirmations and some support that you can only do so much. And you're here to say you can look at it from a different way and know that maybe what you did was the best you could. And now by helping others to identify some of these signs and signals so that they can be in the place that you weren't able to be. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, no, it does. Yeah. And even there was a review on Amazon from this man. I don't know him personally as a friend of a friend, but he's worked in the mental health care field for 40 years, and he wrote that even though I made mistakes, there were things that even those in the mental health care are capable of making, because it is so misunderstood. With mental health illnesses, and we're still trying to figure out more. But there are beginning things that are happening in neuroscience, and they're starting to figure things out. But we really need to better understand that and do more work there. And we've done a lot with cancer, for example, but we need to treat mental health the same way that we would treat cancer or any other serious health issue, because it is becoming such an epidemic, or it already is, not becoming, it is an epidemic.
Yes. Okay. So with your son John as your art partner, what's your project?
I'm not sure. I think I started to pick up oil painting last winter, so I think I'll have to get those out and find some classes and get back to it.
Just play. Just play. Yeah. Even if you doodle, okay? Even if it's like a 3x5 note card and you take out something that doesn't even have to be a color. It can be ink. It can be, just give yourself permission to not make it perfect and not make it mean anything except like, wow, this feels good. This feels good. Yeah. Does that make sense? That makes sense?
Yes, it does.
Just feel it. Feel it. And that way you're carrying it forward. I really appreciate you talking about this, and I appreciate you made the interview easier for me because I could just ask questions, and and sound like I don't know anything because I don't.
No, but a lot of us don't, So that's the thing, is we're trying to learn, but I think it's just being respectful and kind is the most important thing we can do when we don't know.
Yeah, we learned. We all learn together.
Yeah.
So for people, you have a Facebook page, and it's Finding Color in the Darkness on Facebook, and that's where information on the book. Also, the book is available through Amazon. You've got Prime, no shipping. Just throwing that in there.
Yeah.
Right. But one way or the other, you are adding light and you are adding insight to an issue that we really, really are struggling with right now, and that's suicide, along with the bipolar issue. So thank you for your contributions. And John is right there with you. He may not have the vessel, the vehicle, but he's got the attitude. All right?
Thank you so much. I agree. I totally agree. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. Take care.
When things feel a bit chaotic, Instacart helps deliver milk and sausage. Add a little life to your cart. Get stuff from literally all your stores, from baby wipes to albacore. Add a little life to your cart. Instacart helps get your groceries. Your first 3 deliveries are free.
Download Instacart. Add life to cart. Terms apply.
Instacart shoppers know groceries. They know that you can't make guacamole with rock-hard avocados. They know how to quickly find those peanut butter pretzels you can never find. And they keep you in the know by giving you updates about your order along the way. Let Instacart shoppers help take shopping off your plate so you can get time and energy back for what really matters. Visit instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply. Instacart. Add life to cart.